You've probably seen the term floating around online, brain rot. It sounds super dramatic, right? But it kind of perfectly describes that feeling of mental fog so many of us are getting familiar with. In this explainer, we're going to break down what it really is, and more importantly, how to actually fight back.
But let me just ask you something, right from the get-go. What if the very things we use every single day to connect, to learn, to be entertained, what if they're quietly chipping away at our ability to focus, to think deeply, to just be present? It's a heavy question for sure, but it's one we really need to dig into.
So, what in the world is brain rot? Before we can even start talking about how to fix it, we've got to get on the same page about what we're actually dealing with here.
Okay, first things first, and this is super important. Brain rot is not a medical diagnosis. You're not going to go to the doctor and get a prescription for it. Think of it more like a cultural catchphrase for what happens when we weaken our mental muscles. It's that hazy, foggy feeling you get after hours of endless scrolling and just a constant stream of low-value, super high stimulation content.
All right, so if it's not a medical thing, is there any real science behind this feeling? Oh, absolutely. Let's actually take a look at what's going on inside our brains when we're glued to our screens.
Let's break this down into what you could call the 4 big culprits. First up, dopamine overload. Every little notification, every like, it's a tiny hit of a pleasure chemical, basically training your brain to want more and more. This leads right into the next problem, a reduced attention span. Our brains literally get rewired to expect short, fast, punchy content, which makes trying to focus on something like a book a real struggle. Then you've got hyperstimulation. The constant bright lights, the sounds, the jump cuts, it's an assault on our senses, and it leaves us feeling kind of frazzled and wired. And finally, all of this just leads to desensitization. The constant intensity online makes the simple, quiet moments of actual real life start to feel, well, kind of boring.
And that right there, that's the real kicker. Your brain's reward system gets totally hijacked, rewired for that quick, easy digital hit. And because of that, the patience you need for a deep conversation or to get lost in a good book, it starts to feel like a massive chore.
So how does this actually pop up in your day-to-day life? Let's move on and look at some of the really common signs. You might even be experiencing some of these right now without connecting them to your digital habits at all.
Does any of this hit a little too close to home? A foggy mind where your thoughts just don't feel sharp? Finding it almost impossible to read a book or a long article without getting distracted? Having like zero motivation for anything that's not on a screen? And of course, that constant nagging urge to just check your phone? Yep, these are the classic signs.
So you might be wondering, why does this seem to hit younger generations like Gen Z and Alpha so hard? Well, it's because for them, these digital habits aren't something they learned, they're foundational. Their brains literally developed inside this hyper-connected world, making it the default setting for how they interact with everything.
Okay, so that all might sound a little bit grim. But here is the good news, and it is really good news. This is not a life sentence. Your brain is incredibly adaptable. We can absolutely fight back, and we can reclaim our focus. So let's look at some real concrete steps you can start taking, like today.
The key here is that tiny changes can make a huge difference. You could start with a dopamine detox, maybe just one day away from your most addictive apps. Start rebuilding your focus muscle by reading a physical book for just 10 minutes a day. You can practice deep work. That just means setting a timer and focusing on one single task with zero distractions. Use the tools that are already on your phone to set limits on your screen time. And finally, try swapping some of that super fast content for slow content. You know, like a documentary or a long-form podcast that lets your attention really settle in and deepen. It's like training your brain for a marathon instead of a sprint.
You know, all of this really boils down to one simple, powerful idea. It's all about being intentional with what we consume mentally, just like we try to be with the food we eat.
At the end of the day, it's really this simple. The content you consume, it literally shapes your thoughts, your attention span, and how you see the world. By making conscious, wise choices about what you're feeding your mind, you're not just avoiding brain rot, you're actively building a stronger, sharper, and more focused brain. And that choice, it's all yours.